You entrepreneurs. Today we have the owner of the Henley Company. She is Nicole Matthews. It is an event management company. She talks about her story of coming from the corporate world in event management to kind of going on her own and really just asking people for help. Still taking her can-do attitude, but asking people, because people probably have that connection that you might not have at this moment. You're going to want to listen. You're going to want to subscribe. And you're going to want to tell your friends because, hey, all you have to do is just ask. All right, guys. Thanks.
Welcome to the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with real estate agent Vinny SD.
All right, guys. So we are here with Nicole Matthews. She is the owner of Henley Company. It is an event management company, but of course she wears so many different hats. So you're an author, motivational speaker. What else we got?
And I've owned the Henley Company since 2007, so entrepreneur is probably the big hat that I wear.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. So tell us a little about the Henley Company, how that came about, what it does.
Sure. So the Henley Company is an event management and personal concierge firm that I started in San Diego in 2007. We do event production, lifestyle management, travel coordination for our clients. So we have the pleasure of working with not only our event clients to do full event production for corporate and nonprofit clients, but we also do a lot of travel coordination and personal assistance. So we manage the lives of busy executives and their families by managing their household or errand running or in-home entertaining, kind of whatever's on their to-do list is what my team is able to handle for them.
wow.
So in 2007, I started the Henley Company, and my background is in event management. I like to say I started when I was 17. I was the prom coordinator in high school. So that's really where my first love of events started. And I was fortunate enough to start my career at the University of San Diego, where I managed the event portfolio for the Alumni Relations Office. And so that was really, really fun because I got to plan all the big parties and events for all of the graduates of the University of San Diego. And then I created an opportunity for myself, and you're going to hear me say created an opportunity for myself probably a few times in this interview, but I created an opportunity for myself to move to London, and I worked in London for 5 months as a consultant. Then I came back to San Diego, and I landed at a law firm, and I knew on the third day I was in the wrong spot, but I stayed 5 years because I was on what I like to refer to as the should escalator, right? I had done all the things I should. Like, I've gone to school, got a college degree, I have a master's degree, I've worked in corporate America, I've, worked internationally. And so here I was now in this like big fancy job, right? The job that, most people would have aspired to have. I was doing marketing for the second largest law firm in California. And I knew on the third day I was in the wrong spot. I was like, is this all we've been working for? Like, is this really what being a grown-up is all about? And so I stayed 5 years because I didn't know what else really to do. And I figured if I moved to a different company that I would just have those same sort of challenges or frustrations, just at a different address, right? So I knew that little by little I had to figure out what was the next thing for me. And so I decided to become an entrepreneur. I don't come from an entrepreneurial family, so it was very foreign to me, but I started to slowly build a business on the side. And then eventually I was able to leave the law firm, and they became one of my very first clients, which I always say to people who are starting their business, don't be afraid to ask your current employer to become a client of yours, because obviously if you know that business, you know that work, not just because you're leaving doesn't mean that it's awful for everybody, right? It's not a negative thing that people leave, but I was able to keep the law firm as a client. So that was 2007. And now for the last almost 13 years, I can't believe that, I've been an entrepreneur and been running the Henley Company. And so we've been able to do everything from, small, intimate, in-home gatherings to I've been able to work at 3 Olympics now as well, and 5 Super Bowls and all of, those things that come with that. So I've been very, very fortunate that I have a career that I love, and I get to do work that I love every single day. It's not easy, as any entrepreneur will tell you, but it's definitely made me happier and more fulfilled than any other corporate job ever has in my entire life.
So jumping back, okay,
Yeah,
for
that was
prom,
a lot. I know.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. It was a lot of good information, though. A lot of good information. You have it down to a science. You can
Yeah.
definitely tell that you speak. It's so going back to that 17-year-old.
Yep.
Okay, prom. Were you thrown into that, or was that a calling for yourself?
No,
to
I think it
actually-
was a calling for myself. So I was
Okay.
always in, ASB or student leadership. And when there was an opportunity to plan the prom, I was like, yep, that's what I want to do.
So in the law firm, what were you doing there?
I was, so my official title was marketing manager, but I handled the events for the 250 attorneys and our clients. And I also did business development and PR. So more in that marketing, PR, business development world.
Okay, but
Yeah.
so you still were a coordinator of sorts through your
Yeah,
whole life.
every job I've ever had has
Yeah.
always had an event spin to
Oh,
it.
wow.
So I knew basically since 17 that I was going to always be in the event industry. And even when I started my own business, I knew that events would be the core of my business, but I had all this other stuff, travel coordination, personal assistance, all this other, bucket that I was really interested in. So I discovered that there was this whole industry called the personal concierge industry. And at the time in 2007, that was really not something that most people knew about because they were familiar with concierge like in a hotel, obviously, but this whole personal concierge, meaning like I can have those same sort of services and I don't have to be staying at the Four Seasons, that was really starting to develop. And so I purposefully created a company that was not just events because there's a lot of event planners in San Diego and in the world at this point, but I wanted to do something in addition. So that's why my firm is always referred to as a event management and personal concierge firm. So we do both.
With the event, there's an event, and so
Yeah.
you're working towards that piece. For the concierge, it would seem like almost be a recurring
It is.
clientele.
Yep, it is. So, so many of those clients are on a monthly retainer for
Okay.
us, and so my team will show up at their house on a regular schedule, and they might have a list of things for us to do. That might require us to leave the home and then come back, errand running, that type of thing. Or it could be that we're waiting for an appointment to arrive. Somebody needs to come do something at the house, and the clients can't wait, if you will. Or it could be that they just need some, personal assistance with their business or, some light sort of assistance in their business. It could be anything. So most of the work is not really, I'll be honest, is not really that sexy and interesting most days. People always want to hear like the really super, salacious stories. Generally speaking, people are pretty normal and they just are busy. And so they want us to just kind of lighten that load for them.
Well, the way you're describing it, though, you're saying they're not all salacious. They're not all. So that means there's a couple in there.
There is. It's sort of the code of like, confidentiality and stuff. You want to make sure you respect that. But generally speaking, most people, occasionally you're kind of like, that's interesting. But as I always say, as long as it's ethical, legal, or moral, legal we can all agree on. Ethical and moral I could be entertained by, and at least ask the question, and I'll let you know if I'm willing to do it or not.
So it seems like, at least from past experience talking to people, when they have a side hustle and they turn it into a career, there's either a slow burn where it's now they have enough revenue coming through that allows them to transition over, or there's a catalyst that happens.
Yeah.
What happened with you there?
So I would say mine was probably a slow burn, but what was really instrumental for me is that probably about, I'm going to say maybe 15 to 18 months before I actually left the law firm, where I had really kind of committed to this and was trying to learn everything I could learn about starting a business and, trying to manage both at the same time, is that I sat down one night and I wrote an email to probably, I don't know, about 100 people in my life. And I just announced that the Henley Company was now in business. And I still had my full-time job at the law firm, but I announced that I was in business. And why that is important, and I can tell you a story about doing that also for how I got to the Olympics, so we can talk about that in a few minutes. But why that was important is because as soon as it went out into the world, it became a real thing. So for so long, I had held on to it, and it was sort of my thing that I wasn't really willing to talk about because, insecurities, and did I know what I was doing, and I had a job, and did I want to rock the boat of like my employer finding out that I was starting this business, and all of those things that go into sort of self-doubt in the beginning of starting a business. And then, so when I finally did announce it to the world, that changes everything, because now it's accountability, because if I was to meet you and you said, oh, I got your email, how's your business coming along? I can't say, oh, I sent that email and I did nothing, right? And so it became accountability, right? As soon as it went out into the world, I had to show up.
Did you notify your bosses that you were going to release it?
No.
Okay.
No. So again, it was sort of being kept. But having said that, I had a very strong relationship with my director of marketing, and she was very supportive. So she knew really that like this wasn't where my heart was in terms of working at the firm. I still did great work. I still produced. I still showed up. I did all those things. I certainly wasn't coasting, but she knew that I had this other thing that I was interested in. So did I officially tell my employer? No, but I was lucky that I had somebody in my corner who was willing to be supportive of that. And then eventually when I did want to leave, she was obviously the first person I told. And instead of saying, hey, I'm leaving, and she said, how do we make this work? Because I had kind of primed her that eventually one day that conversation was going to happen. So back to sending this email, the other thing, not only is it accountability, but then it also tells people obviously that you are in business. And so now some opportunities start, coming, and people start thinking about you in a different way because now you have a business that you can serve these people in, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always a big believer in that you have to tell the world what you want, because otherwise the universe doesn't know how to help you, right? If you're struggling with something and you're looking for a connection or an introduction or whatever, if you don't tell me who that is, I don't know how to help you with that.
Yeah.
But more often what happens is you tell me, hey, I'm trying to meet this kind of person, or do you know this person? And it might not be today, but it could be a week from now that something randomly happens, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just with Vinny, and like that, perfect. Let me make that connection for you. But now, because you're on my radar, because I'm paying attention to what do you need, right? And how can I help you? And so I'm a huge believer in telling the universe what you need. And I don't mean just like quietly in your bedroom. I mean like telling people what you are looking for and what is your dream? How can I help you? How can I help you grow your business? What would be easier for you in terms of business and life and all of those kinds of things?
Well, yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things where it's like you put in your Raz and you'll say, okay, I want to see a white truck, and you don't see white trucks, and then now you see white trucks everywhere. Like,
yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a degree to that, and I think as women, we're not necessarily always the first to be like, hey, this is what my dream is, and this is what I feel like I'm entitled, and I don't mean that in a selfish way, but I feel like I'm worthy of deserving of that, and so women are a little more shy about it. And I actually, in one of my presentations that I will give, is I give every woman a note card, and I have them write down what I call their big dream or their authentic intention, and then I collect those, and then I read them out. And I do that because there are women in the room that aren't ready to read that, just sort of stand in their power and read their own card. Yeah. But I read that out, and then, I'm sort of with the intention of like, now it's out in the world, right? So what are you going to do next, right? It's one thing to just sort of announce it, but then you obviously have to have follow-up, and you have to have action, and you have to have all these things. It's not like I can just put this out into the world and be like, all right, I'm just going to wait for the Olympics to call me. That's not reality. But by telling people, eventually one thing leads to another, and then you get what you're looking for. So
yeah, it's small accountability by telling everyone that everything they like you're saying.
Yeah.
How's business?
How's business?
Yeah. And you're like, oh my gosh, do I lie to them or I tell them the
right.
truth? What's going on? So.
Right, exactly. And it's a daily reminder that like you have to keep working on what you're working towards.
So now let's get to the good one right there with the Olympics.
Okay.
That first one right there.
Yep.
You put it out in the world.
Yep.
And you just sat back, ate bombs, and you're like, it's going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because that's how every Olympic athlete gets to the Olympics too, right? So, okay, so it's November of 2011. Okay. And so a little background information. Obviously, I do events. For me, the Olympics is always like the ultimate event, right? So, yes, it's all about sports, but I look at everything from an event perspective. Yeah. So for me, that was my dream. Couple that with the fact that I'm a huge Anglophile, which means I love everything to do with England. I have family from England. I am all about being in the royal generation. I love.
Were you born in the U.S. or?
I was born in the U.S., but I have family. Yeah. So
we're in England?
Sort of northern England, like the Manchester area.
So if you have any people from Manchester?
Yeah. Right, exactly. So this is becoming the perfect storm for me. Okay. Olympics in London, are you kidding me? Right. Yeah. So, so November 2011, it's a Sunday. I'm sitting working at my desk, and something just inspired me to write an email. Right. So here we go with creating my own opportunities again. So I sent out an email, and I think there was about 150 people maybe on this email. And again, I just basically said, hello world. My criteria for you receiving that email was basically like, would you recognize my name? So we didn't have to be best friends, but at least you would recognize my name if it came in your inbox, right? So that was sort of my criteria. And so I sent out an email that said, this is my dream. I've always wanted to work the Olympics. The fact that this particular Olympics in 2012 is happening in London, like, forget about it. Like, this is just going to be the most amazing experience. I know somebody knows somebody who can help me make this happen. So if you have an introduction you can make, or you have a suggestion on a connection, absolutely would value that. And then please let me know what I can do to return the favor. Within about 24 hours, I had over 30 people respond back to me. And it wasn't necessarily the like, here's the one and only phone number you need to call, but it was, this is amazing. I'm so excited for you. I have a cousin that lives in England. We have an office in England. Let me reach out and see if we are, involved in any way in the games. So there was just this positive swell of all these people who suddenly were very invested in helping me to make this dream happen. So, fast forward, I teach at one of our community colleges here in San Diego, and I'm talking to one of my fellow faculty members, and she's talking about the fact that she isn't going to be able to teach in the spring because she's leaving to go to London for the Olympics. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And so I was like, listen, you are the person. You are the person that can help me do this. This is my dream. Please, if you could make an introduction, I would so value that. And she's like, oh my gosh, so easy. I had no idea, right? I had no idea, right? So long story short, she makes the connection. How I work at the Olympics is through brand activation and VIP hospitality. So there is a company that specializes in working with the sponsors for all the major sporting events around the world. And when sponsors, say Visa or Coca-Cola or McDonald's, sponsor the Olympics, they obviously pay hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. But then they want to bring their VIP guests, and so they want those guests to have an amazing first class experience. So the company that I freelance with on these projects hires senior event people to come in and actually execute the program. So for me, I had no pre-London obligation in terms of any work. So I did nothing leading up to it. But when I got on site, then for 6 weeks, we had to execute everything that this team had been doing leading up to us all arriving. Yeah. So there was about 25 senior event people from around the world that got hired to come in. So the fact that I even got to get to London was amazing. The fact that I was working at the Olympics was phenomenal. But the universe really did smile on me. And they allowed me, because of my background in being a concierge and event manager, they actually assigned me to manage the CEO of Visa Europe, the Visa Europe office. Wow. So anywhere he went, I went. So for my very first Olympics in my lifetime, I was at 17 different sporting events, and I was not in the worst seat in the house, if I can tell you. So 5th row, center court at Wimbledon, 3rd row when Usain Bolt went, by me in a flash. Saw Michael Phelps win all of his medals that sent him over the, that kind of put him at the top of, his game and all that kind of stuff. All of that was just an experience of a lifetime, and it's easy to get caught up in that part. But I think it's important that you look back to where did that start from? That started from one email, having the courage to send that email, and then literally becoming like a dog with a bone and just telling everybody and anybody who would listen what it is I was looking for and how they could help me.
How many people did you email out to? So you got 30 responses.
Yeah, about 150. So it was a really high return rate.
Wow.
It was really high. Now, again, not everybody came with the golden egg, but then a lot of people suddenly became champions for me and thought about and would send me things like, oh, did you ever think about this? Or I just saw that, or anything to do with the Olympics.
So the people that you emailed, were they people that you talk to on a weekly basis, daily basis, monthly basis, past clients?
Yeah, again, it was just my criteria was as I went through my database, I was like, that person would recognize my name. Okay, that person's my cousin, so they obviously know me. But there was really sort of the only qualifier was
Just
like,
they recognize your name.
You would recognize my name.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have to do a lot of like, hi, remember we met that one time?
Yeah.
It was like a BCC email that went out to everybody. They all got the same email. But when I created that list, it was really just like, how well do I know that person?
How many times would you go back to the same pool, like to say, okay, I have another dream? Like, is it every like?
I don't know that there's. That's a good question. I don't know that there's ever a cap on that. I think you just have to be respectful of people's time and energy. So I still go back and ask people for other things, but. I don't know that you want to be that person like every day, like, hi, here's my new one, here's my new one, here's my new one. But I think when you have something that really is on your heart and you really have something that you're working towards, creating that community of people around you, I think is really important.
Did anyone take you up on what they could do back for you?
Occasionally I get that. I try to be very mindful about in those emails that it's not being self-serving. It's really just, here's how you can help me, and then please, how can I help you? Because I just don't think that's good karma if I'm constantly the one who's like asking and not helping. But it's funny. I was just with a colleague at a professional club that we have here in San Diego, and she is making a life change. And so she was telling me that she was going to be leaving the organization, and her dream is to work for Nike. And so I was excited about that. She's moving to the Portland area, and I was trying to rack my brain, like, who do I know who works at Nike, blah, blah, blah. And literally the next conversation I have at the club is a woman who has just left doing a program from Nike.
Oh.
Okay. So kismet, serendipity, I don't know. But if my friend had not been bold enough to say, hey, I'm about to leave this organization and here's my dream, I would never have made that connection. So, of course, now while I'm having coffee with the woman from Nike, right, I'm now texting my friend who's still in the building, and I said, please come to this table immediately. And now they've made that connection, right? And so I was able to make an introduction. So I just love when that sort of thing happens, when people are bold enough to say, here's my dream, here's what I'm looking for. Obviously, that's a pretty extreme example that in 30 seconds I could have made that magic happen, but that doesn't mean that in a week later I wouldn't have had a coffee with somebody from Nike and then been able to make that connection. But now it's on my mind that my friend is looking for somebody.
With the person you said, Chase or American? What was it?
Visa.
Visa. Sorry. I was getting there. All right. So Visa, now you're with them for the time, the whole event. Mm-hmm. Do you try to make a connection with them and try to keep in contact with them later on, or is that frowned upon, or how does that?
It's a little bit frowned upon when you do some when you kind of work as freelancers like we do on these projects. Yeah. So I want to be very respectful of that. Yeah. It's not to say that we couldn't make a connection, but if business was to come to me in that way, I would need to be. I just feel like I would need to make sure that the company that I freelance with knew that, and then they could decide if that was appropriate or not. Yeah. You just want to, you don't want to, what is it, that thing to spite your face, like cut your nose to spite your face or whatever that saying is. So yes, I think that there could be opportunities, but I think also when you are freelancing under someone else's umbrella, you want to be really mindful of that. I certainly wouldn't want somebody to do that in my business. Yeah. There are some times when some opportunities might present themselves, but I think just being honest with everybody and saying, I just want to let you know that John Smith has called me, and how, what's the protocol on that, I think is respectful. And it's certainly how I would want somebody to treat me in my business if it was the same situation.
So where did the mindset come from, asking people
for help?
Like, where did that come from?
I don't really know that. I think that's a really good question. I mean, my parents are super supportive, and so I grew up in a house where you kind of could be anything and you want it to be, and there was really no limitation on my dream. And I just think it's more about I'm really fascinated with like putting pieces together. Like when I can get a challenge of like, ooh, who can I figure out? How can I figure out how to get from A to Z? And I don't necessarily know. I know where I'm starting from and I know where I'm getting, but I don't know the middle pieces. We're so lucky right now growing up and being in this generation of social media, because that A to Z has just has shrunk, right? There's nobody that you can't get a hold of in the world anymore, right? When I was in college, we had to use a phone book, literally like open the phone book. And now with just enough tenacity and enough asking and enough creating opportunities and value for other people, there's like, it's endless. And for me, it's a challenge. Like I like to see who can I get to, how can I put those pieces together? So I don't know that I guess it's just something I was born with. I've never really thought about it, but I just am a huge believer in creating your own opportunities and asking people to help you like that. I hope we'll say that on my tombstone. Like, please go create your own opportunity and ask people to help you, because your life will be totally different when you do. Right? We're so used to just being in a silo.
And it feels, I know when I get asked for different things or to help someone out, you feel good.
Yeah.
So it's not like a negative by asking people. Most of the time it's perceived as positive. So what are some of the hurdles transitioning from the corporate world? I know it's a similar dynamic that you were doing before, but now you're your own boss.
Yeah.
So what's been some of the hurdles?
So I started in 2007. Yeah. So if you might remember what happened in 2008,
yes,
that was cute. So the economy just completely took a crapper, if we all remember. And so now I'm a year into my business and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Cause now the retainers that I had to kind of make that leap and, everything had, expired by that point. So what really changed for me was I created an opportunity for myself by self-producing an event. And so, for most of the women who are listening will remember that in 2008, a little tiny movie called Sex and the City came out. And so I actually self-produced an event where I created the entire experience here locally in San Diego and then sold tickets. Oh, wow. And so it was a revenue generator for me. It was all done through strategic partnership. So I had very profitable, and very little overhead because I had brought the right partners involved. And so the other piece of that I really love in business is strategic partnership. Like how can I create an opportunity for you to get in front of the audience that you need to be in front of? So I created this huge monster event. And so that really was kind of a turning point. And then from there, I started self-producing other events. And then when Sex and the City 2 came out in 2010, I actually wrote a handbook on how to produce a movie premiere around Sex and the City. And I sold that concept to 7 other markets around the country. And so 7 planners in other markets actually produced their version of a Sex and the City movie premiere based on my recipe. So I was kind of like, here's the ingredients. Here's the recipe. I don't know what your cake's going to turn out like. You have freedom to do whatever you want with your cake, but I'm giving you at least the tools that you need to make that happen. So creating my own opportunities has really been, and self-producing has really been sort of the bridging of the gaps that come from the economy and all that kind of stuff. In terms of what it's like to be your own boss versus somebody's employee, it's the typical stuff. It's very little of doing your craft, like the thing you love to do, that the reason you wanted to get into business, and a lot of running a business. So proposals aren't fun often. Invoicing is not always fun. Going to the bank and depositing checks, yes, that's great. You're lucky to be doing that, but that's not always fun, right? Talking to your insurance guy and, just all of that, dealing with staffing and all of those kinds of things that that's not fun a lot of the time, right? But it's the necessity. And people who get into business only see she just produced a big event with a celebrity this week. Oh, that's so exciting. Well, there's a lot that has to happen before I'm standing on the midway with Gina Davis this week, the actress Gina Davis, for an event, right? That's all great that I get to take my picture with Gina Davis, exciting. The younger generation's like, who is she talking about? But Thelma and Louise and League of Their Own and all that, right? So that's all exciting, but there's a lot that has to happen before I'm standing on the midway with Gina Davis, right? So when people are starting their business, it's really about that craft is a very small percentage, right? I mean, you're in real estate, right? there's probably piece of it that you really love, the reason you got into real estate, and then there's all that other stuff, right? And so, like, it's not sugar-coated. It's not every day that it's, linen colors and cake flavors, as I like to say.
What keeps you pushing through?
The challenge for me, I've always said that if I have to go back and get a job, that I will have failed in my business. So there's definitely been times where it's been a little touch and go. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But I love the challenge of it. And I love the fact that I create my own thing and that I'm not beholden to anybody else. And that's not for everybody. I mean, my parents both retired after almost 40 years working at the same company. So like I said, I don't come from an entrepreneurial background. I am, in a family of very like diligent savers. You work for the same company, sort of that traditional workforce. So here I come like, oh, I'm going to totally do it different. I don't really have a clue what I'm doing. And so that's been interesting, but thankfully I have a really supportive family who can help too.
How long do you allow yourself to soak in that enjoyment when you're up there with Gina Davis or that event?
Not very long.
The day of?
The day of. Okay. Yeah, the day of. And then now I'm 2 days away from that and I'm on to the next thing.
You're on the next thing?
Yeah, I'm on to the next thing. So that's what's so great about the event world is we're very project-based, right? Like we fill up the binder, we execute, and then that binder goes on the shelf and we move on to something different, which is really what I love. I could not do the same thing every single day.
Yeah.
So it's great leading up to that event on Wednesday, and we raised a lot of money for a nonprofit here in town, which is really important and all of that, but that's great. But now we move on. Move on. Yeah. You can't, because that's not paying my salary anymore.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
So I can high five my team and say, great job, but let's move on to the next thing because we have to make money.
Yeah. And I think that's the balancing act of it because you want to soak it in a little bit, but you also can't get, soak it in for a month.
Right.
After you're just like, oh,
exactly.
that's so fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Soaking it in isn't going to pay my car payment. So you do celebrate the wins, but then you also have to stay humble and be like, all right, here we go again.
So what piece of advice would you give that 17-year-old girl building that prom at that point in your life, I guess?
I would say that creating your own opportunities is going to be a game changer for you.
Yeah.
So be bold to ask people to help you. I would say also that find that inner confidence and don't always let the demons in your head or the self-doubt in your head win out. Because for a long time I allowed that to happen, and self-esteem and all those kind of things that just cloud your judgment, cloud your fun, cloud your courage. I've definitely struggled with all of that. But then when you start to sort of take control of your own destiny and create your own opportunities and look at strategic partnerships and all of those kinds of things, it's like it can be super fun at the same time too. So I would say, that would be the biggest thing, is just create your network of people, even at a young age of 17, like figure out who your network is, and then just set a goal and then figure out how people can help you. You obviously have to do the work too. It's not like I just put it out in the world and like, all right, people, figure it out, come back to me. But just really being bold, I think is an important thing. And we don't give ourselves enough permission to do that.
So what's next for the Henley Company and yourself?
Yeah. So for me personally, I wrote a book called Permission, Stop Competing and Start Creating the Life You Want to Live. So I wrote that book back in 2014. And that really came out of sort of the audience I was speaking to when I do presentations and then through my students, because they hear things like, oh, she's worked at 3 Olympics and 5 Super Bowls and blah, 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 blah. She owns her own business. On paper, all that is fancy. I get it, right? That's impressive. I'm proud of what my resume says, but there's a lot of backstory, and I didn't just come flying out of the womb with, that resume under my belt, right? So I always like to say that whoever you see on the stage is delivering a message based on a lifetime of experience, right? So don't just say, oh, that person is so successful and so fancy up on that stage. I could never be like that, because I've been backstage with those people, and I know a lot of them are probably holding it together with duct tape and a rubber band, right? So everybody has their social media life and then their real life. And so I wanted to be very honest about the real life too. And so in my book, I talk about the big wins, but I also talk about depression, self-esteem. I talk about having my heart broken. I talk about financial issues. I talk about all those things to say, listen, just because you see it on the paper, on the resume, doesn't mean that life has been perfect. But also, because all of those things have happened, you can still figure out how to get up every morning and create the life that you want to have.
Yeah.
And so I think that's that's even more important than like the fancy resume is, okay, that happened. Now what? What did you do the next day?
I've been on a big push. You know David Goggins? Mm-hmm. I've been on a big push for this stuff, and he's talking the same thing you're talking about. You put these people on a pedestal right there, and it's just regular people. He was also bringing up the idea that you look at his bio, and he goes, "I don't believe in myself," and that's probably the same thing for you. When you look at it, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't this way Olympics, this way Super Bowls." Like, I'm just,
exactly. Yeah, when people introduce me when I speak, I'm always like, "Who's that girl?" I want to meet that girl. She seems impressive, right? Because I really have I mean, I do appreciate everything that I've done, and I've worked hard, but again, that's not going to pay my car payment. That's not going to pay, fill my retirement. That has to. It's just those are things that they're building blocks, right? So yes, that's great that you did that, but now what? I'm always in the now what? Okay, but what's next? And so, so back to your question about what's next for me. So speaking is obviously a great passion. I love sharing my story. I love talking about my wins and my losses and my challenges and all of that. So the Nicole Matthews brand as an individual brand is being created as we speak, and then the Henley Company will just continue to really be my first child and continue to hopefully do amazing events and experiences for our clients and then figure out how to marry the two of those together. So
what's the best way for, let's say, a nonprofit or entity that's looking for your services? What would be the best way of getting in contact with you?
Yep. So you can always go to our website, which is the Henley, Henley company. So thehenleycompany.com, or you can email me directly at Nicole, Nicole at thehenleycompany.com. And then on social for the Henley Company, I am at Henley Co. And then for my personal brand, it's at Miss MS Nicole Matthews.
Well, thank you for all your time. Thank you for all the information. Hopefully everyone listening got some great information. You just have to put it out in the world. Ask people. People are going to want to help you.
Yes.
And so what I'm doing right now, guys, is I'm going to ask you to subscribe, tell your friends, and listen. All right, we'd love to hear your feedback, and hopefully you'll be reaching out to Nicole and getting some of her expert advice on the upcoming event. All right, guys. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to The Road to Growth, Success of an Entrepreneur. Please like, subscribe, and stay connected. Visit www.vinnySD.com.
Yeah, I created a website.
Hope to see you again next week. Team Vinny SD, signing off.